Undersecretary Sara Ariola said the Filipino embassy in Lebanon also felt the shockwave. Based on the latest count, around 100 people were confirmed dead, while 4,000 were injured. The DFA confirmed that 2 OFWs were among those who were killed.
Both of the household service workers were in the houses, in the homes of their employers. And of course, they sustained injuries because of the explosion.
8 OFWs were injured, while 12 remain missing. One is a household service worker, and 11 are seafarers working for the MV Orient Queen cruise ship. Their vessel is docked just 400 meters from the warehouse.
Nag-decide na sila talagang tumalon from the ship kasi nga feeling nila lulubog sila. Yung mga may dalawa na nakarating nila sa embassy natin, nasa chancery sila ngayon, sila yung nagkwento. Pero sinisikap natin talagang mahanap yung mga kababayan natin through the hospitals talaga. And of course, there will be search operations.
Though it's still unclear what exactly caused the explosion, Lebanese President Michael Aoun said they are looking at the 2,750 metric tons of ammonium nitrate that has been stored in the warehouse. He said what happened was unacceptable as the explosive substance was stored for 6 years without safety measures. Meanwhile, affected OFWs are advised to call up the embassy in Beirut for assistance. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
Following the explosion, Lebanese President Michel Aoun is calling for a 2-week state of emergency. The explosion left Beirut's port in rubble. The capital's governor estimates that 300,000 residents have been left homeless. Rescue workers are still continuing to dig tirelessly through the ruins to look for survivors, some of whom are feared to have been thrown into the sea due to the magnitude of the blast. The massive explosion also destroyed Lebanon's main grain silo, leaving the nation with less than a month's reserves of grain. The country's economic minister assured residents, though, that supplies are on the way. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed that the Beirut blast was an attack based on the type of explosion.
This was not some kind of a manufacturing explosion type of event. This was seems to be, according to them, they would know better than I would, but they seem to think it was a attack. It was a bomb of some kind, yes.
The House Committee on Justice has started tackling bills pushing for the death penalty for drug-related charges, but one proponent wants out. Marlene Alcaide explains.
The House Committee on Justice started debates on the 12 death bills filed at the House of Representatives. This was done more than a week after President Rodrigo Duterte urged Congress to revive the said punishment for drug-related charges. But Muntinlupa City Representative Rulfi Biazon, who is one of the bill authors, asked the committee to exclude his bill from the agenda. He said now is not the time to discuss the measure.
I believe that at this point, a contentious social issue such as death penalty may be an unnecessary distraction in the effort to consolidate public and private sector support and focus against the pandemic.
Justice Assistant Secretary Nicolas T. said the reimposition of death penalty is within the powers of Congress. He admitted, though, that some execution styles are a concern, like hanging. For Human Rights Commissioner Karen Dumpit, the country cannot reintroduce the death penalty as the Philippines ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Dumpit also warned the bill's repercussion on OFWs who are currently on death row.
If we will impose this, we have no more moral backing to be able to go to this country and say, save our Filipinos from your death penalty. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. We become hypocritical, actually.
The Integrated Bar of the Philippines opposed the revival of death penalty and described the punishment as anti-poor. Meanwhile, PAO Chief Presida Acosta, who once advocated against death penalty, had a change of heart and expressed support for capital punishment. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
As the start of classes draws near, the Commission on Higher Education admits the Philippines is lagging behind when it comes to distance learning. CHED Commissioner Prospero de Vera says despite existing laws on distance learning, only those in graduate studies are able to maximize this feature. Still, the Commission is appealing to universities and colleges to implement online learning. CHED has ordered the development of more than 4,000 free Wi-Fi sites to help tertiary schools pressed with the necessary networks.
We have the policy, we have the law to cover it. But to be very frank, in the Philippines, we are way behind our neighbors in the region in the use of open distance learning as a mechanism to increase access to higher education.
Enrollment in private universities and colleges is expected to decline by 60% this year due to the crisis. Private accrediting agency PACUCOA said this may lead to retrenchment among teachers. Some private universities and colleges have put their teachers on floating status as enrollment numbers fail to hit their targets. Let's pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, a care package system that has been in place in PhilHealth since 2013 may just be the very reason why corruption persists in the state insurer. At least that's according to one lawmaker who grilled the agency in today's House probe. And lawmakers are now batting for legislative security and immunity to protect those who will testify about the alleged corruption in PhilHealth. This after one witness backed out at the last minute. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Fresh from yesterday's Senate hearing, PhilHealth officials were once again grilled for alleged corruption in the agency. This time around, it was the lower house that exposed the supposed mismanagement of the agency's funds, supposedly through a scheme that has been running since 2013. Ria Fernandez with the story.
PhilHealth Chief Ricardo Morales, this time appearing before the lower house, once again denied the corruption claims of resigned anti-fraud officer Thorson Keith. But he admitted that reforms have to be in place to rid the agency of anomalies.
Maaari lang ho maiwasan ito kung mag-invest sa information technology. Kasi dito ho natin mapipitigilan yung mga fraud na nangyayari. Ito ho ang strategic shift at dapat pagtuunan ng ating mga mambabatas at pati ho ang management ng PhilHealth.
But for House Public Accounts Chairperson Mike Defensor, this will not help as long as PhilHealth continues its all-case rate policy that started in 2013.
Mako-computerize lang po ang corruption dyan sa loob ng PhilHealth. Dahil binabayaran ng buo based on a case rate. Imbis na dun sa aktual na ginastos ng isang pasyente, General.
Looking at PhilHealth data, Defensor said there seemed to be a pneumonia outbreak last 2017 with more than 700,000 claims amounting to 10 billion pesos. He fears COVID-19 will also likely be used in this scheme.
I can assure you, General, there will be corruption there. Of the 30 billion, of the released 14 billion, yun lang pong sa mild pneumonia, 43,000. Marami po dyan ang mas mababa ang gastos na babayaran ng PhilHealth.
Morales admitted that overpayments are left to the hospitals, which is in line with the universal healthcare law.
Ang pondo ay in-advance sa healthcare provider network, sa LGU, sa probinsya, para sila na ho ang mag-manage ng kanilang pondo.
But Defensor stood firm with his position.
Mali po yan. Kahit sinong insurance company ang kausapin nyo, pag ikaw na bangga, kung magkano ang bangga, yun lang ang babayaran.
The Commission on Audit said it had previously flagged down PhilHealth for its all-case rate policy. However, Marikina Representative Stella Kimbo, who made a dissertation on all-case rates, said it's actually a solution to the inefficiency of fee-for-service system. But PhilHealth failed to implement it properly. Kimbo also dismissed PhilHealth's claim that its fund's actuarial life will only last until 2021 due to COVID-19. Based on her computation, Kimbo said PhilHealth will still have about a 112 billion peso reserve fund.
Ang worry ko po is sa kaka-project ninyo ng napakalaki, nagkakaroon po ng mas malaking leeway sa fraud.
For Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, PhilHealth should be more entrepreneurial in collecting contributions, like allowing members to pay higher premiums if they want to. But COA noticed the absence of PhilHealth's records for its accounts payable to hospitals. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
A witness against the alleged anomalies in PhilHealth has backed out for security reasons. That's according to Senator Panfilo Lacson. Resigned PhilHealth Executive Assistant Estrobal Laborte logged in during the Senate's hybrid hearing on Tuesday, but he begged off at the last minute. The senator said Laborte cited physical security among other reasons to pull out of the probe.
Last minute, sabi ni staff ko, sir, nagpasabi, may naramdaman siyang sumusunod sa kanya. Even before he decided na mag-testify, alam ko marami siyang, kung mag-all out siya, marami siyang sasabihin. Kasi nung yung unang attempt niya, ang niya, excited eh. He really wanted to, give it all.
Lacson also said other witnesses can be given legislative immunity and security. He added that a subpoena can be issued to compel Laborte and other PhilHealth insiders to attend the next Senate hearing.
I'll talk to him first before I discuss it with Senate President kung isusubpoena ba namin o hindi.
A PhilHealth official says the state insurer is now on the brink of collapse, ironically just when it is needed most. So how are PhilHealth members taking this development? Camille Samonte tells us.
Lauren Lutas is a PhilHealth member. She works as a security guard and has been regularly placing her contribution since 2005. But Lauren now worries that all that may be for naught after finding out that PhilHealth may collapse by 2022.
Unfair na hindi mo rin kasi mixed emotion na rin kasi tapos 'di ba? Kasi halos lahat kasi sa PhilHealth na rin umaak. Kasi hindi lang naman ikaw ang
Over the alleged corruption in the agency, she is a senior citizen and a beneficiary of the mandatory lifetime PhilHealth coverage.
Bakit ganun? Yan pera ng ng bayan, kumbaga. Ano mangyayari sa amin?
Nilda recently used her PhilHealth card when she was rushed to the emergency room after a minor accident. She relies on PhilHealth for hospitalization since she has no healthcare insurance provider.
Ang mahal-mahal ngayon ng mga
7,000 of those are active cases. 9 more patients died of the coronavirus overnight. This means death toll in the country now stands at 2,123. Meanwhile, 222 more Filipinos recuperated from the virus. As it stands, more than 66,200 have gotten better from the disease. The Health Department has laid out its strategies in its COVID-19 response for the next 2 weeks while Mega Manila is under MECQ. This includes stronger coordination with LGUs, contact tracing at least 37 individuals per confirmed case, conducting RT-PCR tests in MECQ areas, and hiring more healthcare workers in priority areas like NCR, Central Luzon, Calabarzon, and Cebu. The Department of Health also vowed to do active case findings through house-to-house symptom checks.
We will not wait for patients to come to the system. We will find them. Eliminating clusters means preventing starting points of local outbreaks to join and grow by keeping them isolated from each other.
And these are the other big stories today. The Transportation Department will now be requiring passengers using public transportation to wear face shields in their commutes. That's on top of the face masks. The new guideline will take effect on August 15, Saturday, in all areas where public transportation is allowed. The latest SWS data show around 3.5 million adult Filipinos got stranded due to community quarantines enforced across the country. This hardly changed from the estimated 4.1 million Filipinos in the previous poll conducted last May. Most people who reported being stranded are permanent residents of Luzon provinces. Around 3 million families were delisted from receiving the second tranche of cash aid from government. The DSWD says the list was trimmed down to 14.1 million due to duplicate and unqualified beneficiaries. As of yesterday, the DSWD said it has distributed the second tranche of cash subsidies to 9.3 million families. And coming up on the big story, the nanny is also a handy on-site camera person. Amy Schumer shares her Emmy nomination with her Filipina yaya, whom she says is also her full-time student. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Some jeepney and taxi drivers are back on the road not to drive but to beg for alms. This as public transportation is still suspended in MECQ areas. A light at their plight in this report by Jenny Dongon.
Manuel and his family lived off of his earnings as a jeepney driver for almost a decade now. But since he can't hit the road just yet, he's now on the road for a different reason. To beg for alms.
Yung anak ko, hindi ko alam kung paano ko sila pakakainin. Hanggang liig na yung utang ko, yung lisensya ko pa, inipit ng LTO.
With him is JR, also a jeepney driver. He's hopeful that government aid will reach him. But while that's yet to happen, he's resorted to begging.
Magtitiis na lang po kami, ma'am, hanggang sa po nahihintay po namin yung gobyerno na magdeklara huli ng mga rota para makabiyahe po kami.
These drivers started their day asking for cash donations from motorists along Rizal Avenue in Manila. They only got 1,000 pesos to be shared by 20 persons.
Nagkakasya po namin, ma'am, yung sinabi nyo na totoo po yun, na 120 bawat isang driver. Nagtitiis na lang po kami, ma'am, sa anong mabibili po ng 120, galunggong, o anumang pong ulam.
The Transport Department vowed to give aid to jeepney drivers who once again lost their sources of income due to the MECQ. The agency is also in close coordination with LGUs to assist the affected jeepney drivers.
Kausap namin yung DSWD yesterday at they confirmed na tuloy-tuloy naman yung pagpapay nila ng ayuda under the Social Amelioration Program of the government para doon yan sa mga drivers na hindi pa nakakatanggap.
DOTR also said that a stimulus package is pending in Congress to assist drivers during the suspension of public transportation. For News 5, Jenny Dongon, PR 1 News.
We have some breaking news. The Department of Foreign Affairs says 10 of the 11 missing seafarers in Beirut have been found safe and accounted for. They have suffered minor injuries, but they are all now with their employer. With the ongoing pandemic, small businesses are still weathering the storm, but as Lynn Olivario shares in this report, some have already lost the battle and have chosen to close down for good.
Ever since the pandemic, most small businesses only have a modest goal: to survive 2020. But for some establishments, there's no other recourse but to close down. Sulok Cafe in Antipolo tried to fight to live another day. But with only takeouts and delivery services, they lost 80% of their revenue, which they used to earn from dine-in customers.
Sometimes we sell things at a loss. Magpo-promo kami para lang hindi masira yung pagkain. Kasi at the end of the day, ayaw din naman namin itapon yung pagkain. Para saan pang nagnegosyo ka kung hindi ka rin kumikita?
Bistro Cafe and Bed and Breakfast, Forest House in Baguio City also decided to bid farewell last month. Owner Ari Verzosa had anticipated losses of up to 75% as they mostly rely on tourists.
Our family is willing to absorb that loss up to December just so we could provide employment for our 25 staff who are like family to us. But 15 to 20,000 loss and then papatungan mo pa ng rent, hindi na namin kakayanin yan.
For now, they're offering their home-cooked meals for online delivery in the country's summer capital.
So we put up Raquel's Cuisine and it's been a month. And so far, it's been good. Although, of course, we're catering to the locals lang. So medyo adjustment with the menu.
In order to bounce back, Verzosa, Escobar, and other MSME owners are appealing for government support amid the pandemic.
So government, madali sa BSP sabihin magkaroon lang ng mas maluwag na payment terms sa mga negosyo na may utang kasi marami sa mga negosyo ang may utang.
It would be of great help with all these projects that the government will come up to entice tourism. Tulungan lang to invite more people to come back. And of course, but despite that, solve this problem regarding this COVID.
The government, through the Finance Department, previously offered the small business wage subsidy measure for employees of MSMEs affected by the pandemic. However, the application period already ended in May. For News 5, Lynn Olivario, We Are One News.
Economic contraction in the first quarter was worse than initially thought. The Philippine Statistics Authority revised first quarter GDP figures to negative 0.7%. That's down from the initial contraction of 0.2% reported last May. Second quarter GDP will be released Thursday. It's expected to fare even worse, with some projections leaning towards a double-digit shrink. Meanwhile, inflation accelerated in July on the back of higher transportation costs. The July print stood at 2.7%. That's up from 2.5% recorded last month. The PSA attributes July inflation figures to the uptick in fares for tricycles, ferries, and domestic airfares. American comedian Amy Schumer has just gotten her cooking show nominated for an Emmy. One of the first persons she dedicated her success to, her Filipino nanny, Jane. In an Instagram post, Amy posted a photo of her and Jane announcing the Emmy nomination for her show, Amy Schumer Learns to Cook. The show also features Amy's chef husband Chris as they whip up culinary pieces, or at least try, for Amy's part. In a separate post, Amy explained that it is Jane who helps them film their episodes in between Yaya duties. The hilarious cooking show will premiere for a second season on August 17. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. You can register for a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News. Good evening.